Welcome to LegacyCast, your source for hearing from top influencers, industry experts, and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is LegacyCast. Welcome, LegacyCast listeners. This is your host, James Snow, welcoming you to the program where we speak to people from all around the world, actually, talking to them every weekday to discuss things that they're doing in their lives that are really writing their story their way so that other people will know that they lived, and also the things that they care about and who they influenced in the process. I have with me today a gentleman by the name of Tim Starr, and I'd like to welcome you to the program, Tim.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Tim, maybe kind of as we get started here, just tell us a little bit about what you do so that the listeners can kind of have a bit of an idea there.
All right. I am a speaker and an author. I've got a couple of books in the law of attraction arena. Big fan of the Esther Hicks and Abraham materials. Basically, what I'm doing is trying to bring some of the ideas that saved me from a lot of grief and anxiety to other people.
That sounds really good. Certainly as influencers and mentors, that's really what it's all about. Is it's the best way to learn is through failure, but even better than that is to learn through somebody else's mistakes, and then you don't have to feel the pain from it. So yeah. It's certainly good to get that shortcut.
I've got an analogy for that if you want to hear it.
Hey, shoot. All
right. Well, there's a lion, a fox, and a donkey, and they teamed up to go hunting for rabbits, and they're running through the forest all day long and killing rabbits, and they pile them all up into one big pile. And at the end of the day, the lion turns to the donkey and says, "Okay, divide up the rabbits. And we're going to go lay down over here and wait for you." So the donkey makes 3 even piles of rabbits, and he goes and finds the lion, says, "Okay, I divided the rabbits." The lion comes back, takes one look, kills the donkey, and eats them. Turns to the fox and says, "Okay, you divide up the rabbits." And the fox puts them back into one big pile. He takes one little scraggly one off to the side for himself. He goes back to the lion. "I divided up the rabbits." Lion comes back and takes a look and says, "Well, how'd you learn to count so well?" And the fox says, "I learned it from the donkey." Point being, let somebody else be the donkey.
Yep. Very true. Very true. Good analogy. Well, I enjoyed that one. So with the program, as the name implies, we do like to talk about legacy and what that means to people. Obviously, it doesn't have to mean just financial things. It also is what we're teaching the next generation, or the things that we're doing, maybe our volunteer work or our charitable contributions and so forth. It's the things that are creating waves in the pond, so to speak. It's creating those ripples that are going to carry all the way across. But what does having a legacy mean to you, Tim?
That's a good question, because I'm not sure I know what it means to me to have a legacy. I know that what I want to do is it's cliche. I want to change the world.
Okay.
But what has come to me is that I'm not, changing the world doesn't mean you have to go out and be the next Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett, or you don't have to move mountains to change the world. I had an experience where I did a couple of presentations at a school for at-risk kids in Riverside, California. And we got onto the topic of the Think and Grow Rich book, Napoleon Hill, and the ideas in there, and the idea that it's on like every top CEO's must-read list, but there's nothing about business in the book. And so we were talking about this idea of, what you think about can help shape your future. And I saw that this is the first time some of these kids had ever heard this idea. And you start to see the wheels turning, and the eyes are like go up, and they're thinking, and then I was approached afterwards by a couple of people, and I left that saying, I want to do more of that, because I realized that that kid in the front row who got that little smile on his face, I just changed the world in some tiny little way. And he may or may not do anything much with it, but that's how us regular folk can do it.
Yeah, and oftentimes it even is something as simple as just planting the seed. Like what you're explaining there. You plant that seed, and then it's going to be watered by life experience, and then at some point that seed is going to sprout, and it's going to start it's going to grow roots, and then get bigger and bigger, and it can become something great. And so that really is one of the truest forms and definitions, I think, of legacy is when we're planting seeds, and then it's going to turn into something bigger, so that in turn he will be planting seeds later. And so the example of that student you're talking about, that's one of the good ways that we can look at it. Do you feel that people should or should not put a lot of energy or active consideration into what they're doing that's going to create that resounding effect on other people?
I think that if you have a clear intention for what you want to do, and you're in process of doing things that are creating a better you, that the people that you touch along the way are going to be affected in the right way anyway. And so I don't really think that you need to worry about that you really need to put a lot of attention on that. I think it's always good to be mindful of how you're interacting with people, but I don't think it's the primary focus.
Okay, and as far as with you as a business, you're mentioning that you've written some books. How do you correlate your impact on other people into what you're doing as far as being an author?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you give me that in a different way, or? Is
your writing book something that is kind of your way of leaving that legacy for yourself? Leaving something behind that's going to help people grow.
Yes, but it was not an intentional thing to begin with.
Okay.
My first book was an idea that came to me and it wouldn't go away, and so I sat down to see where it would go, and half of it just came all at once. And then the second book really is a compilation of blog posts that I did over a course of, I think, about 4 years. And what I was doing with that was trying to wrap my head around some of the ideas I was bringing in and consuming, and it gets noisy in there sometimes,
Yeah, I understand that one. The brain runs at 100 miles an hour, and so sometimes those ideas just flood in.
Yeah.
So as far as from a business standpoint, though, if you're looking at your business model as a CEO, what would you say maybe a few things are that you're concerned about or keep you up at night, as they say? Are there a few things, or what would you say?
I'm very much in the beginning of my process, but so I don't know if I could wear the label CEO very comfortably, but I'm the things that concern me are presenting the message that I want to present in as clear a way as possible, so that it's not misinterpreted on the receiver's end. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that, but
sure.
that's the kind of thing that that concerns me.
Okay. Do you believe that strategy is something that people should invest a lot of energy in? Coming up with a strategy, both on a personal level and a business level.
I think it makes excuse me. I think it makes sense. Some people fly by the seat of their pants pretty well. But I think, in business, you get to a certain size and you can't do that anymore.
Right.
There comes a point where if you're in a business that's, let's say, a one-person business, and you get to where there's just too many plates to juggle, and you can't grow anymore. Your income is going to level off. It's time to take the next step up and hire somebody to take care of some of those things so that you can focus on the stuff that actually makes you money. So in that sense, I think it's important to sort of plan at what levels maybe you need to make the adjustments to what you're doing. On a personal level, it certainly makes sense there too. Most of us, I think, tend to just bump through life and deal with whatever comes along as it comes along versus trying to look forward and be proactive about stuff that's happening. We're all going to get older, but most of us don't really plan for it.
That's true. That's true. And unfortunately, in the world I'm in, I see that kind of firsthand with other people and helping them with their finance. Is something I see a lot that they did not give that consideration and then reach a certain point and discover I wish I had done this 20, 30 years earlier.
Right.
What do you think for other business owners though? What do you think some of the reasons are that they either fail in their efforts or they give up? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think failing, it kind of depends on how it comes. Depending on who you talk to and depending on your situation, I guess, there's a lot of people that are big on failing fast, which makes sense. If you're trying something new and, it's a question mark, then if it's not going to work, you want to know as fast as you can so that you can drop it and move on to the next thing. If you've been in business for a little while or you buy somebody else's business that's been around for a little while and suddenly you're struggling, then failure is not something that you ought to be even expecting at that point. Then it's time to look at the systems and processes you have in place, or sometimes it's a mindset thing. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question.
Well, that sounds pretty good. So just from your experience though, are there specific roadblocks that you would warn somebody about that's wanting to start up something that you discovered?
There's more than, well, first of all, they're going to come. Right? It's something that we all hear, but we tend to sort of not accept, I guess, is that the road to success is not a straight line. You're going to have failures. You're going to have things that come up no matter how well prepared you are. And then when they do show up, there's more than one way to beat them normally. The old adage, if there's more than one way to skin a cat. But a lot of people tend to, it's like if you're driving a car down the road and suddenly there's a wall, they want to just bang against the wall and back up and bang against the wall again. But, where if they just looked off to the side, there's a gravel drive around it, So sometimes we can get really hung up on, I've got this problem. I've got to fix it. But the opportunities are all around you. But if you don't look up from the grinding wheel and look for them, then, you don't see them.
Sure. And well stated there. So maybe some different resources that you've come across for perhaps somebody that's wanting to do what you're doing, that you would point out to them, different resources or support that they could look for.
Yeah, it depends on which arena you want to look at. Speaking is, if you want to write a book, there are 1,000 people out there with programs saying, I'll help you write your book in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I saw one that said 47 minutes the other day. For me, the stuff that I write is not so well laid out ahead of time. It tends to be a little bit more, not stream of consciousness. So it's a little more difficult for me to go that route. But certainly if you know what you want to say and you're really clear on that, then you can get your book written in a weekend. Speaking is another thing. If you want to be a good speaker, there are, Meetup is a great resource. There are speaking groups all over the place if you just look for them. And most of them, in my experience, are free or very near to free. Toastmasters is a great resource. All you got to do is look. It's like anything else. Once you start looking, and today we have the internet, and the world is open to us now. You can find stuff in an instant. When I was a little younger, you ended up, your resource was the library, and they may or may not be able to help you much.
That's true. That's true, and the internet has changed a lot of that for us.
Yeah, but you just have to look, and then you have to actually, I'm an introvert, and so I'm not driven to go out and meet people and be the center of attention and all that. So for me, it's a step outside the comfort zone to attend one of these things. But once you do it once or twice, you find out that it's not going to kill you, and they can be kind of fun, and the people are nice and all of that, and all the concerns that you had tend to start fading away.
No, very true. Very true. Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more of an introvert too. And so, getting out and putting myself into a public space is uncomfortable. But, as that saying goes, success doesn't happen in your comfort zone. So I have to remind myself of that you have to get uncomfortable in order to get successful.
Yep. Well, can I comment on that? Because it's, when people say that, a lot of the times my experience has been that what people on the other end hear is you got to get comfortable with being really uncomfortable. And the reality is you don't. Because your comfort zone, if you think of like your living room is your comfort zone, outside your comfort zone can be just opening that front door and stepping one step out. And so you can be within arm's reach of your comfort zone and have your world change. But I think it's the same as with the message of go out there and people want to inspire people to go change the world. You don't have to do huge things, because a lot of us get that message and we just think it's too much for me. I'm going to go curl up and go back to bed. You don't have to do huge things to make an impact.
That's true. That's very true. So as far as our value systems and how we incorporate that into what we're doing, how is that something that you have accomplished as far as your personal values or beliefs, and then what you do in business?
How much time do we have? I can basically, I spent about 20 years in the computer support industry, and the whole time working as a contractor, which for anybody who doesn't know, just basically means that you're paid by essentially a staffing agency, but you supply services to somebody else. And I was almost 15 years on the job in one spot, working for New York Life insurance company. And I got a phone call one day from my rep, and they said to tell you today's your last day, go home. And it was completely unexpected and unplanned for. And so I went from a good job and good money to nothing in moments, literally with a 2-minute phone call. And so then I didn't work again for 2 years. And what didn't happen to me was I didn't go through what the quote unquote experts say is supposed to happen. I didn't go into depression. I didn't start questioning whether I had any value in the world. I didn't question, well, if I'm not this, then what am I? None of that stuff happened to me. And then when I became aware of that, then you have to ask, well, why not? And it just pointed back to my mother had been looking for answers for things all her life, and she shared a lot of what she was checking out with me when I was a kid. And so I consumed these things from people like Wayne Dyer and Zig Ziglar and a lot of names that people would recognize. Mm. But I took it in because it was interesting to me. Mm. And I had the advantage that at that age, I didn't have the resistance to, if they said, well, you're responsible for where you are in life because of the decisions that you made and the actions that you took. Mm. I didn't have resistance to that. I took that on and said, well, that makes perfect sense. Okay. And I don't remember putting particular effort into changing anything. But over time, when I lost this job without warning, I realized that this had kicked in and saved me from feeling like I was victimized by, the universe. And sure. When I look back, I set it up. And so if you have that perspective, then you don't have the sort of the pain and anxiety that you normally might. So I don't know how far that goes to answering your question.
Yeah. So what's something that maybe earlier in your life that you wish you had done and didn't do? Is there anything that comes to mind?
That I had done and didn't do?
Yeah, something you wish you had done earlier that you didn't do. That.
Okay. You were breaking up a little when you asked.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just not a lot, I think. When I was in high school, I loved football, and I was fast and I had good hands, and I couldn't necessarily throw it all that far, but I could catch and I had moves and all that. And I wish that I had gone to the tryouts for the high school team because I could have made it. But some friends and I went up and we found out they had already started practicing, and it was summer in Chicago, August. And we went up to the high school and we saw the guys out there and what they were doing in full pads in 90-degree heat and 100% humidity. And we just kind of said, oh, that's nice. Let's go home. I wish I had not done that. I wish I had gone forward and done it because it would have been a lot of fun. I'd have probably been snapped in two if I'd ever made it into college or the NFL, but it's not that big. But it would have been fun.
Yeah. So as far as business hurdles and struggles that you've gone through, what are some of those? You mentioned some of that as far as with the career at New York Life and then that ending. What are maybe some additional hurdles that you faced, and how did you deal with those?
The biggest thing I've had to deal with is, the losing that job and then having this realization of why I didn't suffer from it was the thing that made me want to go out and talk about it. Because prior to that, it just was there, but I wasn't consciously aware of it. And so when I started to do that, it was, okay, who am I going to talk to and exactly what's my message? And I come from the south side of Chicago, which is a hugely blue-collar part of the world. And even though I haven't done that kind of work in a long time, I still relate to those guys, and they really, really need these ideas presented to them because it's just not something that's on the radar. And then, you have other people talking to you about this and that, but what about this? And so it kind of shifts the target audience has kind of shifted for me and gone around to different people. And then it was, well, how am I doing this? Am I going to be a coach? Am I going to do, what am I doing? And it's taken a long time to kind of sort that out. My website still says that I'm a life coach, and I need to, maybe after we get done with this conversation, I'll go take that off of there because it's really not something. I've just made the decision I'm not going to do that. going a different route with it. So figuring out the audience, I know essentially what the message is, but figuring out the platform for delivery has been a challenge. Those are the two biggies.
Okay. With those challenges, were they obvious to you, or have you kind of stumbled upon discovering that?
They're obvious. They're obvious once you start to think about them, I guess. That's for me. I don't know. I didn't, I just felt like other people need to hear this stuff. I'm not the only person who has these challenges, and I know that other people are not hearing it, and so I just want to share it. But I wasn't immediately clear on who I'm going to talk to.
Okay.
And so that's it's and the more I just as I said, the more I thought about it, the more I talked with different people who had different input, and the more it changed. And so I think I'm pretty well targeted right now, but it just was not it was not instantly clear.
Sure. So is there perhaps another profession that you've toyed with going into other than what you're doing currently? And if so, what is that?
No, not since I started down this path. Okay. It's a I'm easily, I've got shiny object syndrome, and I'm easily distracted on things, but these are two topics, the law of attraction and personal growth, that still are plenty shiny, and I never get tired of talking about them. I've got a podcast with a friend of mine, and we jump straight in sometimes to the deep end of some of these topics, and it never gets old. So to this point, I haven't had any second thoughts about another direction.
Okay, and what would you say maybe one of your greatest strengths is that drives you in what you do?
I'm a pretty good teacher, I think. Other people have told me that, but also I know, if I present an idea in some way and the person on the other end isn't getting it, I can back up and give it to them in a different way, maybe 2 or 3 times. I know people who they try to tell you something and you just tell them, I don't understand. They just give it to you exact same way again and again and again.
Right.
So that's one. I don't like to blow smoke at anybody. Mm-hmm. Honestly, there's an audience for everybody. If you've got a message, I don't worry about whether or not the person I'm talking to is really going to get it. They're either, my audience, or they're not. And I'm okay with that. And you're just not going to be the right person for everybody. So that's one thing that sometimes is really hard to let go of, is you want to be able to talk to everybody, and everybody needs this. Well, yeah, sure. But everybody's not going to resonate with your message or your delivery of it, or the words that you use, or the shirt you're wearing, or something, So, or maybe it's just the wrong time in life for them.
Mm-hmm. And that's a valuable point that you're mentioning there, because a lot of people, especially when they're starting out in their business, they try to please everyone, or they try to do business with everyone, and your market is not going to be every single person you come across. And even when you're introducing yourself and they're asking, so what kind of person are you looking for? You don't want to say, well, anybody that's a warm body, because that's not really, we can't help everyone. There's not enough hours in the day. And so, it's most appropriate to help people that are going to benefit from what you can do.
Right.
What would you say is your greatest weakness, though, Tim?
Focus, or lack of. I have a difficult time a lot of times sort of shutting down the monkey mind.
Mm-hmm.
If I get focused on something, I can stay focused on it. But there are lots of times when it's getting to that point is a struggle. So that's a challenge.
Okay. Yeah, I relate with that one because, you were mentioning earlier the shiny object syndrome. Yeah, I sometimes can have that, and, I'll see things in my peripheral vision that, needs to be done at some point, but it might be nagging me to where I want to do it at the wrong time. And so, that's one of the things I struggle with too.
Yeah. And it's also, part of this too is a piece of that puzzle is we want to do a lot of different things. And you say, well, they're all related. It's all the same, but you can't do 6 different things at the same time and be any good really at any of them. What we need to sort of resign ourselves to doing is picking one, focus on that, get good at that. And then once you've kind of got that down as a system, you got the well-oiled machine, then expand and pick the next one. Because there's always going to be ideas and opportunities, but I think we tend to think that what's in front of us right now is the only one.
That's true. And one of the truths I've learned over the years is that when you start trying to do multiple things, putting multiple fires or multiple irons in the fire, it's like if you have 5 different irons going, you have 5 different projects going, you're not able to give 100% to all 5 of them. You're giving 20% to each of them. Right. And so, what's the quality of that going to look like when you get finished? Because you've only given 20% to each one of those 5 things. So it's better to just focus on one, and then when that's to a good place, move to the next one, and then to the next one, and do it appropriately.
Right. And what if one of those 5 is really sort of a pet for you, and you give that 50%? What's that leave for the other 4? Right. It's even worse. So.
Oh, indeed. So if you're describing what you do at a very high level to maybe somebody that wants to follow in the footsteps that you are, to do that kind of coaching, speaking, or even being an author, how would you describe what you do at a high level?
The high level, I suppose, is intention. My goal at this point, the first 2 books that I wrote were really for me. One, as I said, was just I had this idea that wouldn't go away. And then the other was I had the blog that I had written, and I had just stopped contributing to the blog. And so I said, well, let's just turn it into a book. And so both of those things were for me. What I'm working on now is with intention for other people. And so what I'm trying to do is present ideas, or my version of these same ideas that have been talked about for thousands of years, in a way that makes sense, in a way that is actually going to resonate with a crowd, right? And be happy with it along the way. One of the big lessons is that the end point is not where the value is. The end point is the process the value is in the process between here and there. Sure. That's where all the lessons are. That's where all the good stuff is. That's where you grow. And so, if there's, maybe that's a piece of it too, at a high level is understand that, what you start out to do may not be what you end up doing. And that's okay, but it's the stuff that affects you along that path that is the valuable stuff, and that's the stuff you can use going forward. There's lessons in everything if you want to look for them.
Mm-hmm. Well put. So kind of as a, people get ideas in certain places, maybe, if it's in nature or a certain place in the house, where do you get your ideas? Where do you go to brainstorm? Is there a certain spot?
It kind of varies a little. If it's not too hot, sitting on my patio is really nice. I've got a zero gravity chair out there, and those are really comfortable, and it's a good place for meditation and letting the mind go. Sometimes it's just sitting in a chair in a living room. And then, some of the ideas that, at least in the moment, seem the best show up when you're least able to record them, in the shower or driving the car or someplace. But
yeah,
if I'm going to actively pursue it, then those are probably the two primary places that I'm at.
Okay. Okay. And as we wind up our time this afternoon in speaking, I like to always kind of finish with my trivia question, asking people to tell us something about you, Tim, that most people that maybe you run into don't know about you.
In any area? Is this wide open?
Yeah, wide open.
Okay. I don't know. In 1987, I got on a bicycle. I was living about 40 miles west of Chicago, and I got on a mountain bike, which at that time was sort of a brand new thing. And I rode up into Wisconsin and across Wisconsin to the far southern tip of Minnesota, just over the Mississippi River. And then by the time I got to the Mississippi River Valley, I'd had enough wind and rain in my face. I was done with it. But Uber didn't exist. I couldn't call them. So I rode down into Iowa and then back over. And I had a little Toyota pickup with a cap on it. I threw the bike in the back of that and a couple of other things, and then just started driving around and just kind of landed in San Diego. So, been here ever since.
That's a kind of an interesting story there, is it? A little sightseeing expedition there.
Yeah, it's if I'd had somebody with me, I probably would have gone along a lot farther. I had a pipe dream of riding all the way out here to California. Although, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if there'd been somebody with me. But yeah, it was kind of lonely.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, left alone with your thoughts, as it were.
Yeah. So it was an interesting 2 weeks. Absolutely.
Yeah, I bet.
I'd like to do it again in a more organized fashion. Take a probably a cross country trip with a couple of other people. It's on the bucket list.
Yes, sounds like that could be fun. Well, Tim, yeah, I appreciate your time today and your willingness to come onto the program and tell us a bit about you and the things that are going on in your life and kind of what makes you as a person tick and those perspectives. What is a good way for people to get a hold of you to be able to reach out?
The best way is just to go to my primary website. It's timcstar.com, and stars with one R. So, okay. Yeah, start from there, and there's links to other things.
Okay, great, Tim. So that's timcstar.com for people that are listening to be able to reach out and get in touch with you, and you'll be able to take that to the next step. Yep. I appreciate you coming on the program, and as I always say to people, see you around the bend.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to Legacy Cast. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to come back next time as we speak with more top influencers, industry experts, and business owners from around the world.